العظيم سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله 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 العظيم. I think Sidi Jamal can comment on that word. Can tell us something about this particular tasbih. Alhamdulillah, Rasulullah said, it's one of the words that you should make your tongue moist with. He said, don't let a day go by without you saying this particular word. Subhanallah al-Azim, Subhanallah bihamdi, Subhanallah al-Azim. I know in the word al-Latif, there's a very beautiful one done translation by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. He normally splits it into he splits it into Subhanallah wa bihamdihi 100 times, and then Subhanallah al-Azim wa bihamdihi 100 times, which is permissible anyway. I think probably there is more jaza in doing it that way. But alhamdulillah, you can do it Subhanallah or Subhanallah wa bihamdihi Subhanallah al-Azim. I'm just forwarding this to just my wife who wanted to have a look, so just a minute. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for creating us, alhamdulillah, and for bestowing guidance upon us, and for bestowing us with all His blessings, His mercy, His love. We cannot thank Him enough.
but inshallah we hope he guides us to that which pleases him. And we also thank him subhanahu wa ta'ala for blessing us with our Prophet, our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the brightest light that any human being can have in their lives. So we are blessed with that. So we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wassalatu wassalam ala habibihi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll try and cover whatever is possible in the time we have, inshallah. I wanted to show a short video, but it wasn't possible. But I'll just mention a little bit about it's a very short clip done by a very wonderful sister, Puriwal, Muslima Puriwal, and it's called Islam is Relevant, Are Muslims Relevant? I think it's a very beautiful title. Islam is relevant and are Muslims relevant? And I'm just saying this because before we start, we just need to remind ourselves, of some things which should be always at the top of our intentions and our actions. So, the sister is asking, are we relevant? And it's a good question to ask. And when I was reflecting deeply about that, if you look around since I think probably 1989, when we had the Somali Civil War and the Afghanistan Civil War, when the Afghan Civil War began, somewhere around?
2001. The Civil War.
The Civil War itself. It should be in the 80s, right? Just late 80s. And it was about the same time with Somalia. And so that's about 11 years and then 17 years now. So we're like 20-something years. And in those 20-something years, unfortunately, it's a hard fact for us Muslims to wake up to, is our relevance really has been for all the wrong reasons. And correct me if I'm wrong in this. We have been used, the Muslim Ummah, to initiate wars of destruction. Wars are initiated in the name of Muslims, and properties are destroyed, lives are destroyed, countries, nations, freedoms are taken away from people, from nations, even in this country, in Europe, almost everywhere in the world, in the name of Muslims, terrorists, or Muslims this, Muslims that. So, we are relevant for all the wrong reasons. I forwarded a clip to a few people. General Wesley Clark was a former big man general, 4-star, I think so. And here's a clip in 2007 where he's talking about how in 2001, after whatever happened in America, he went to the office just to find out what was going on. And one of his generals called him in, because he was retired by now. And he told him, we are going to attack Iraq. And you should listen to the clip, because he asked him, why? We think it's Afghanistan who did this. Why are we going to attack Iraq? And what happened was, the general actually told him he doesn't know why. And then they went to Afghanistan. So when he went back to the Pentagon again to visit, he says the general called him in and he said, it's worse. Because he asked him, why haven't you not attacked Iraq? And he said, it's worse. I have a memo here and we're going to attack 7 Muslim nations. So this is 2001 and they've been doing it. And the final one is to be Iran. Now the reason I'm mentioning this is just to put us in a very deep perspective. What does it tell you when your enemy openly plans against you and then executes with success? What does it tell us about us?
That we're not performing as we should.
Good oil.
Huh?
Get a oil.
You know, if I tell you I'm going to destroy you in 2 years' time and I destroy you, what does that tell you about you?
Weak.
You know, it asks you to reflect very much, isn't it? What's wrong with us? Where are we going astray? Why is it that people can do this to us and keep doing it? And do you think they will stop? Now, bringing it to what we're doing here now. Why do we do these things we're doing? What is our aim of being here?
They want to dominate and have the oil, you know, that's what they want. Because
It's
they want to, they don't want us to be prosper and this and that, you know.
We know what they want to do, but the question is, how is it that they can do it to us when they want to do it?
Because we are not together.
We have to go deep and ask ourselves. And it's the same way we are here. We have to keep asking ourselves, what are we doing here? What is our aim of being here? Right? I think we've been having these halaqahs now probably 7 years, 5, since it started.
Seems like that, doesn't it?
Something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, 4.5 years.
4.5 years, right? And well, subhanAllah, mashallah, I know some people have like almost attended all 4.5 years. You know, subhanAllah, it's great. But then you have to ask yourself, in that period that you've been coming here, what has been changing in your own personal life? What has been changing in how you practice your deen? What has been changing in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You have to ask yourself that. You see, we are not here for information. We are here for transformation. That's what we are here for. The teachings of our religion are teachings of transformation. They transform us. That's why the Prophet ﷺ came to do. And this transformation is something we have to experience it. And it will have its signs of that transformation. So we have to ask ourselves, if I was to seriously question myself in the last 4 years, how has my state of doing dhikr changed? Really? Do I sit down and have a 40-minute dhikr after Subhi or after Maghrib?
Somewhere.
You know, the Prophet ﷺ gives you the dhikr. Do this. Are we doing it? Have I changed in my fasting? Do I just wait for Ramadan? Or have I made a strong intention where I'm doing Mondays and Thursdays, or the 3 days, the 3 white days, or more sunnahs? Am I reading the Quran more? Am I waking up at night more? Am I giving more charity? That's what the lady is asking. How relevant are you? You know, subhanAllah, today we have a young man who in less than 1 year has become so relevant to the world, which is good for us Muslims, and everybody knows him, Mo Salah. Right? You have people coining beautiful songs about him. You know, he's doing more da'wah than most of us are doing. And if you listen to the sister, he's saying, look at Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali made even non-Muslims love Islam. So please, we have to question ourselves time and time again. We are a people who have a mission. See, because our enemies also have a mission against us. To destroy us and our generations to come. They have a short video which you can all watch. It's an amazing video. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of Albert Pike. Albert Pike was a Freemason, a very big time Freemason and a general in the Confederates. He lived in the 19th century, 18 something. Now Albert Pike Apparently, he wrote a letter. You can read this letter, it's still there, which was published by another soldier who ended up being killed anyway. Now, the letter was written in 1870, and he clearly outlined the 3 world wars that were going to come. World War I, World War II, and World War III. And World War I, what he said was going to happen, happened exactly that way. Now, this is a Freemason, they're dealing with Iblis and whatever. And he was 33rd degree Freemason. But the third thing he said, this is in 1870, you can watch the clip. He said, the final war, we will use Islam. In 1870, he's saying Islam will be used to bring chaos into the world. At a time when Islam was in a state of decline. Right? In the 1870s, we are coming to the end of the Khilafah. And he's saying Islam will be used. How will we rise and be used to do that? Now, if a man can write that 100 and something years, and then it happens, something is wrong with us. So please, let us make our gatherings and what we are learning to be something that transforms us and transforms the world we're living in. Don't let's just gather information and go home. Wallahi. Right? I'm here to talk about fasting, and I don't know how much I'll be able to cover. Because I have a very deep experience with fasting. But before I get to that, the other thing I want to say is, again, I said this last time, this is a very beautiful book for anyone who wants to read. It's called Teachings of Transformation. Teachings of Transformation. And it's not even done by a Muslim, but he sat with a very big time Sufi sheikh for a very long time, and he's a scholar himself. And what he's done in the book is he has covered the teachings of the different religions and what are the aims of this teaching, right? So just to read briefly here what he says, because this all has to do with what we're here for. He says, a teaching is for the wholeness of man. That is to make you whole. Although the perceptions of wholeness may differ according to specific traditions, what is most significant is that where there was fragmentation and alienation of man, a teaching seeks to bring integration and harmony. It is a path through life, and yet immediately more than a path through life. Right? It is the specific characteristics of a teaching that it affects an individual in such a way that his entire world is changed from within rather than from without. Right? So the teachings start transforming you from inside and not from outside. That's where they're aimed at. Right? It's a beautiful book to read, and it can tell you where you are in your transformation. Right? So everything we are learning in our deen is intended for something other than just the physical. Now we notice in life we are constantly repeating the same things. Is that not true? You get to a certain age and life is a repetition. You just repeat constantly. You wake up, you go to the same job, you come home. I was just having a conversation with Sidi Ibrahim. Can share that? And he was talking about how people go to work and just go home and then watch TV and go to work the next day, go home, watch TV. It's a kind of a circular, it's just a cycle which you're going through. And by and large, and then I told him something. I said, do you know even Muslims do the same? We think we're very different from the other, but by and large, we are just about doing the same. We have 10 minutes when we pray, and then we just go back, and most of us again go back, watch TV, finish the night, wake up, go to work, have 5 minutes of prayers, 10 minutes, evening, watch TV. We're not changing so much from what they're doing. That's what I told him. And he said, why is that so? And I said, until you have a different experience of life, you didn't know there's another way of living life. You understand? If you ask them, why are you doing that? They'll say, how else can I experience life? Is there another way of experiencing life? And he said, yeah, but we Muslims can show them. And that's when I said, but we Muslims also experiencing life almost the same way they are. You know, and I'm not putting anyone down. You know, we all watch TVs and we all subscribing. Those who are, subhanAllah, you know, may Allah save us from all of that. But it's just about the same way. You know, so are we having a different experience of life? Can we have a different experience of life? How can we know that there's a different way of experiencing life? And we know there are some Muslims who don't even have a TV in their house. They haven't had for years and years, maybe even from the day, you know, they were young. You know, subhanAllah. And they're not worried about that. So there's a possibility to do that. And we're not saying that watching TV is the most evil of things to do, isn't it? There's still some benefit in that. My point is, are we experiencing life differently from the way others experience? And if you reflect about this question, again, it brings you to what? Ramadan. Look at your experience of life during Ramadan. Really, you hear parents telling their kids, no, you can't watch TV, it's Ramadan. Right? You can't listen to music, it's Ramadan. So suddenly there's a different experience when Ramadan comes. But how come we don't continue or progress with that kind of experience after Ramadan? What is it that is struggling in us to maintain that experience? To continue with that experience? Right? So reflect about that. The repetitions and the experience of life. Now the other thing is, we have acts of worship that we have obligations to perform them, right? Now what we need to wake up to is, these acts of worship, they have multiple roles in our lives. You know, we don't just pray because it's an act of obedience. You understand? That's what we are stuck at. We are stuck at these are just acts of obedience. Are we experiencing the other roles or dimensions of these acts of worship? Are we experiencing them? And you know, people who read spiritual texts, you know, left behind by the great walis, they will tell you amazing things about prayer, right? I was just listening to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf the other day, and he said, he was talking about how some people have died just listening to the Quran in prayer. You know, they just get a heart attack, right? Look at how they're experiencing that Quran. And Allah says that, you know, when they listen to it, wajidat qulubum, you know, their hearts are palpitating, their skins, you know, they're having goosebumps all over them. They're having a different experience of this act. And then we will hear amazing things about dhikr. Right? Yesterday a brother was telling me a very beautiful story which he had from a sheikh. One of the companions, his son didn't come back from a trip, and he was very worried. So he goes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he tells him about it. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a vision about it, and he says, your son has been captured. Right? So they don't know what to do, but he tells them, just go home from now and do this dhikr, and don't stop. Don't stop this dhikr. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So they do the dhikr, him and his wife, they keep doing the dhikr until about Fajr, and their son walks in. Right? And they're amazed. And they ask him, you know, what happened? And he said, I was captured and I was tied with ropes. But at a certain time during the night, the ropes started loosening themselves. And then I was free, And these people who captured me, I walked past them because they all fell asleep. So when he arrived home, he had a whole flock of sheep with him. So the parents saw that, and they asked him, where is this from? He said, it's from where I'm from. They followed me, the sheep. So now the parents were worried. So they said, we need to ask Rasulullah about this. So they went to Rasulullah, and he said, it's yours. The sheep is yours. It's your rizq. And this is one of the asbab al-nuzul of the revelation. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. You know, whoever has taqwa of Allah, يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. You know, he'll bring openings for him or her. وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. He will provide for them from where they don't expect. So he is an experience of dhikr. You know, somebody has done dhikr and they have seen the experience. And the other one was a man who used to do so much salawat, and then he had debts that he needed to pay. And the man who he owed the money took him to court. And now he was given an ultimatum. And just to rush the story through, what happened was, the day he was supposed to go and pay the debts, people who, the judge, the person he owed the money, and I don't know, I can't remember that. So he had the money. Somehow somebody gave him the money. And he asked him, why have you given this money to me? And he said, Rasulullah came to me and said, I should give you this money. Because of all the salawat he was doing. So when he went to the court to pay, the judge said, sorry, here, have another 500. He said, why? Rasulullah came to me, he said, what you're doing? So now he has 1,000. And then when he goes to pay the guy said, no, here, you have this. So now he's walking out with all this money instead of him paying back the money. And why? Because he's doing salawat. That's an experience. You know, so we have to ask ourselves, what are we experiencing in these acts of worship? Are we just doing them as one thing, obedience, and then that's it? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought them just as an act of obedience? No. They have multiple roles in our lives. And it's the same thing with fasting. You know, now we come to fasting. And I just want to read something here to do with fasting, which, you know, it's a good reflection. So, the man says here, beyond any health aspects, fasting was known to possess, beyond any health aspects, it was known to possess. Fasting, like tobacco, was one way, an important way to deepen communication with the sacred. To deepen communication with the sacred. Fasting, it was recognized, increased human sensitivity to the non-material world, to the unseen. Enhanced personal experience of the sacredness of both self and universe, and help the fasting person regain a sense of orientation and purpose. You tell me if that's not true. Don't you realize during fasting, Ramadan comes in, your orientation changes? Really? Look at where do we face during now? We are all facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intensely. So this is one of the aims of fasting, he says there. And then in another page, which I'll read again, he says, here we are. During deep fasting, what is called the rational mind is left behind for a time, and a different intelligence located in the heart is activated. During such fasts, reliance on two-dimensional sight begins to weaken. There is a thinning of the wall between us and all other things, and the organ of perception uniquely designed to perceive the sacred, the heart begins to take on more and more importance. We go back to the heart, right? As deep fast progress, the veil between us and the spiritual world thins. The heart begins to perceive the hidden face of the sacred within everyday things. Okay? Now, I'm taking a different perspective of fasting, right? I think next week, inshallah, there will be a course on fasting done by our beloved Sheikh Khunam and our beloved Ustadh Osman, mashallah, they'll be doing. So they will cover, the other perspective of fasting. And I've previously also covered fasting from the perspective of taqwa, where it's to attain taqwa. But I don't want to repeat that. I want us to look at another perspective of fasting. That's why I'm just reading a few of these things to bring in that perspective. And you can see the perspective here is what? Something to do with the unseen, the inner world. That's the perspective that they're declaring here. Now, this is a quotation from a Christian saint, Hildegard, and she says, "O human, see then the human being rightly. The human being has heaven and earth and the whole of creation in itself, and yet is a complete form, and in it everything is already present, though hidden." It's hidden, and fasting is going to unveil that for you. And finally, let me just quote Imam al-Ghazali, what he says about what Imam al-Ghazali says about fasting. And it's very interesting. So Imam al-Ghazali says, fasting, like every act of worship, is possessed of an outward and an inner secret, an external husk and an internal pith. The husks are of different grades, and each grade has different layers. It is for you to choose whether to be content with the husk or join the company of the wise and learned. That is, go to the pith. So again, what's Imam al-Ghazali saying? Look for the inner meaning of fasting. And I think that there's a translation done of Imam al-Ghazali's book, The Inner Dimensions of Worship. Yeah, it's been done in English. It's a good book to read. And finally, listen to what Imam al-Ghazali says here. He who buries his head deep into a nosebag full of food cannot hope to see the invisible world. Ajib. He who buries his head deep into a nosebag full of food cannot hope to see the invisible world. So that's what Imam al-Ghazali is saying. Fasting is not just intended for the outward. In fact, it has a deeper meaning when you go inward. Now, reflect about this. Rasulullah ﷺ said in a hadith which is found in the Musnad of Abu Ya'la, he said, if the people were to know the benefits of Ramadan, they would wish the whole year was Ramadan. How many of us are wishing for that? The nafs is always challenged with fasting, isn't it? It's the one thing the nafs doesn't like doing a lot. Seriously, I think we all have different experiences. SubhanAllah. It's kind of the nafs is always afraid of fasting. Okay? So Rasulullah said, if you knew the benefit, you would wish the whole year was Ramadan. What's he saying? Do people have any idea what a blessing this is for you? Do you have any idea the immense power that Allah is giving you? The barakah. Right? And then in another hadith, we're told Abu Umama came to Rasulullah, he said, give me an action which I can do a lot. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, fast. There is no action equal to it. And then he said, give me another one. You know, the nafs, isn't it? It's fasting. And then Rasulullah said, fast. There's nothing equal to it. And then he said the third time, give me another. He said, fast. There's nothing equal to it. There is nothing equal to it. Right? And in another hadith is asamu junah, fasting is a shield. Sumu taswihu, fast and you will flourish, you will be healthy. Right? So, you know, these are things that we are told that we can experience from fasting. That we can experience from fasting. Now, I was telling my wife that I'll probably share something personal in the talk. For me, how fasting has been a very deep experience. And then she was a bit wary about that, right? And then I explained to her a few things. She said, yeah, probably it's a good idea. Now, wallahi, this is Ajib. As I was leaving the Friday prayer, as I was going home, I met a brother. And he's, mashallah, he's a muttaqi. Very humble muttaqi brother, who does a lot fi sabilillah. Allah preserve him. I know him. I know what he does. A lot fi sabilillah. And he was having turmoil in his life. And he just couldn't understand. And it was weakening his iman. So when he spoke to me, I immediately understood what he was going through. So I told him in very detail what he was going through. Now that really shocked him. And then I shared with him my experience. He was in tears. And I'm not saying I'll share my experience for you to cry. But he was in tears. And he went back to full joy. And he said, now I understand. Now I understand what I'm going through. Because it was what I had experienced, and I told him this. You see, what's the story of life? And I'm coming to fasting. What's the story of life? Have you asked yourself that? Really? What is the story of life? Other than the story of the states that you can go into. Have you noticed that everything in your life is a means to what state it will put you into? Have you noticed that? Your wife, your children, your husbands, your wealth, your jobs, your friends, whatever you're doing, every time it's putting you in a certain place, in here. Although you're doing it outwardly. Right? I'm worried, I don't have a job. What does that do to me? I go into a state of anxiety. Right? I feel like I won't have any success in life. The lack of it puts me in an anxiety. Now, interestingly enough, I get a job and I'm still in a state of anxiety. Right? خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ هَلُوعًا. Man was created in a state of anxiety. Right? إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا. When he's afflicted with something, he becomes irritated. وَإِذَا مَسَّهُ خَيْرٌ مَنُوعًا. When he has something good, he wants to hold it, right? Withhold it. So he's still worried. So your money can be what? It's a means to what state will it do to you? Your wife, your husband, your children, every day of your lives, they're affecting you. So really the story of life is the story of in here. What happens in here? How am I handling my life every day? Now, if you ask people, what state are you in? Do you know what state we are in? Because what we'll find, we'll just be talking about feelings, which is emotions fluctuating. But what state am I in? Am I peaceful? Am I in a state of joy? Am I restless or restful? How do people even know what state they're in? Do you want to know what state you are in? Right? Now, in here, what we find out? That there is always opposing forces. That's how Allah created us. So Allah wants us to do it, to learn what we are in here. Now, sometimes you go through an experience that teaches you something that you'd never have learned. There is a lady, Jill Bolte Taylor. I'll come to you first in a short while. She's a brain scientist. She wanted to learn how the brain cells work. 4 months into her studies, she had a stroke. And you can watch her on TED Talk. TED, right? She had a stroke, and what happened was one side of her brain shut down. But amazingly, she could now witness everything that was happening. You should really listen to her and read her book. So that which she wanted to learn, which was hidden, became manifest to her through the stroke. Right? And you listen to her, what really amazes you is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do to teach you. Really. And where it takes them back to God. This lady, Joyce Hawkes, I'll just read something about her, who also had a very interesting experience. She's a big time cellular biology scientist. Okay, so her work has spanned nearly 40 years, half of them in solid scientific research in cellular biology, and half in healing practices. Many of them grounded in indigenous healing traditions. She spent 20 years researching the extraordinary resilience of cells under siege from environmental pollutants. So she was studying cells, okay? As a postdoctoral fellow with the National Institutes of Health, a supervisory research biologist for the National Marine Fisheries Service, she published scholarly research, and her credentials are big time. Her life took a surprising twist after a near-death experience. Triggered by a fluke accident at home, she recovered quickly but soon found herself drawn in a different way to the study of cells and the internal mechanisms for what? Healing. Remember, our talk is about what? Spiritual journey and healing. And I've mentioned a few people telling you your fasting is for a spiritual journey. Now he is healing. So increasingly attuned to the healing power of mind, body, and spirit. Two of these are unseen, aren't they? Mind and spirit. Eventually, she left the formal laboratory with advanced instruments to study health and healing with indigenous healers around the globe. Joy's twin passions for studying both science and spirit drew her into this expanded field of exploration and practice. These extraordinary opportunities, particularly with indigenous healers in the vast world of non-Western practices such as Bali, Philippines, Southern India, and Tibetan Buddhist, opened an experience of new dimensions of, listen to this word, new dimensions of spiritual and healing practices, and opened her mind to the powerful effects of healing states of the mind. Healing states of the mind. In these cultures, attention to what? Spiritual practice is not called upon solely in times of illness, but daily, to maintain vitality, keep the body renewed, and to support robust health in the dimensions of body, mind, and spirit. That's really a gym. So what happened? She had a near-death experience. She fell and she blacked out. And during that time, her soul journeyed. Although I don't know where to. And I've read her book. And the book I read is it is an amazing book. Listen to the title. Her first book she wrote after her experience is called Cell Level Healing. The bridge from soul to cell. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The bridge from the unseen to the seen. And I read the book, it's an Ajib book. I was really moved because what she was saying is what I was experiencing. And there's a chapter where she says something very beautiful about water. She says she realized after every healing treatment, she would go and wash herself because she realized she was removing the energy that was negative from the previous patient to go to the next patient. Ajib, wallah. I recently saw a clip about Muslims in Mexico celebrating Ramadan, how they fast, and this man, Mexican man, he was saying something that happened to his grandfather. His grandfather is a shaman are the healers in that tradition. He was 90 years old, his grandfather, and then he saw him doing wudu. And he asked him, what's that? He said, that's what we do in Islam. And he said, I know this, we do it before we journey into the other realm. And he took the Shahada at the age of 90. Do we know what we have? Are we really walking up to what we have? If we understand what we have, we would be doing more and more of it. You know, this is why when I said, let's do this dhikr, it's not to encourage you to go into this state. You know, I hope I have a few minutes to share my story. Maybe it's of benefit, you know. And you can see, you know, sometimes people have to tell us their stories for us to learn, isn't it? We learn sometimes from people. You know, if the story of Muhammad Ali was never told, we wouldn't know anything about greatness, about Himma, or Malcolm X, or Martin Luther, or some other great people in this world. You know, they have inspired us because we've had their stories being told, or they're told us, or we have read their stories, right? Now, the reason I'm sharing this because my story is the story of that unseen and the fasting. And I'll just cut it short. See, when I came into this world, Allah gave me some gifts. Like I was deeply inclined towards religion. Since I was a child, and people noticed that. I was very inclined towards religion. But I also had a lot of gifts for sports. I was an incredible sportsman as a child. By the time I was 6 years old, one of my nicknames, by the age of 6, people used to call me Stamina Man. This is as a child. They said I would never get tired. And my biology teacher in school used to say, he has the most powerful lungs in this world. Right? I could play 3 complete football games of 90 minutes in one day, and he wouldn't get me tired. I was also an amazing footballer. Allah gave me that gift. It was for a reason. You know, when I was doing my level 3 coaching in this country, the English managers who were doing the coaching, this is what they said. They said, if you put him in defense, John Terry is a shadow. If you put him in midfield, there's no midfielder like him in England. And if you put him in striker, there's nothing like him. So even in this country, they recognize the ability I had. So I had these gifts. But I also had a very difficult childhood, which I could not understand. Right? And this difficulty just continued. It was very, very difficult for me growing up. So on the one hand, I had an inclination for deen, but on another hand, I had a pain in me that I never understood. Okay? And I carried this pain for years and years. And because I had a lot of abuse as a child, so I used to believe that I was just going through the trauma of the body. But this pain, I could never describe it. But it was tormenting me. It was tearing me to pieces. And yet, physically, I always looked very healthy. But I was really going through a lot of hell, which I never understood. But I was also practicing my deen a lot. And I had a lot of major breakdowns. You know, my liver shut down for a while, then my lungs did the same thing, then I had a heart problem. So I was having these major problems where you'd actually stare at death, you know. And that was my life just going on and on. And I actually believe that probably by the age of 30, I will be dead through the tribulation. So I'm just cutting this short to get to where I want to get to. And I had seen a lot of doctors. And believe it or not, I could never get my body to get beyond 52 kilograms of weight. I was the skinniest person you could ever look at. Okay, and I never understood why. And everybody used to ask me and I didn't know why. Yet I was the most energetic person you'd meet. And you never met me without a smile. And the people who have met me, they'll tell you that. I was always smiling. So I just could not relate these two things that was going on in my life. What it did to me is I thought, I'm practicing my deen and I'm going through such major tribulations that this is what Allah means by testing people. So whatever I'm going through, every Muslim must be going through inside of me. So that's what I believe. I believe you're all in the same state as me. Inside. Outwardly, you had good life, maybe you had good families. I didn't have that. But I believe everyone is being tested the same as me, inside. Now, the two acts of worship which really cost me so much pain, just devastating pain. And I'm telling you the truth. Fasting. When Ramadan came, I was in hell. It was so painful for me to fast. After every Ramadan, I would lose about 10 kilograms of weight. So from 50, I would go back to 40s. And everybody would wonder, what's wrong with... People used to tell me sometimes, you don't need to fast. You don't really need to fast. But I had to keep fasting. And I could not understand why people were becoming... They would add weight during Ramadan. And I used to ask them, why are people putting on weight? I'm losing weight during Ramadan. We're all fasting. I can see you're fasting, but I just don't understand it. So this was a very painful act of worship for me. And wallahi, I didn't have any hatred towards Ramadan, but I never understood why people cried when Ramadan came to an end. I just thought, okay, it's done, alhamdulillah, let's go forward. So that was one act of worship which really destroyed me. The next one was any gathering where Rasulullah was being praised was hell for me. And I didn't understand it. And you see, being in madrasa, every year we had to have Mawlid. So those Mawlid sessions were hell for me. And I still did not understand why am I suffering so much. Do I hate the Prophet ﷺ? So this was my life, just continuing. And then at some point, I left the country, came to Britain. 1 year after landing here, my pain went 1000% more. It didn't become easy, it became worse. And then alhamdulillah, I met some very beautiful people who directed me to some very beautiful shuyukhs. And for the first time when I listened to these shuyukhs, I thought I could feel something in me that might relieve me. But I didn't know what it was. But what was happening now was, I was now practicing my deen more intensely than I ever did in my life. And the more I was practicing, the more the pain was increasing. But at the same time, the more I noticed the effect I was having on people, which I could not understand. I was teaching in a madrasa. When I started, they had about 70 students. Within a few months, they had over 150 students, and they had about a waiting list of 100 students. And people would come and ask, is this the madrasa of Ustadh Sharif? So I was having this immense effect with the grace of Allah on people, and then I was suffering more and more. But at the same time, I was learning the world and the deen even deeper and deeper. So my knowledge was really expanding, and my practicing was it was just getting more and more. I used to do sunnahs which would last 2 hours. I would finish dhuhr and I would be doing sunnah until 4:30. And even when my wife married me, it was an interesting incident. One time her cousin came to visit, and I was doing dhuhr, and 2 hours later she came back up and I was still praying, and she went down and said, my wife, he must be a wali. SubhanAllah. So he's still praying up there. But I was experiencing something that was too deep. I could experience, whether it was an inspiration, that Allah was working through me. Whatever I was doing was going into the world. And I was finding it very difficult to stop. Something had to occupy me, whether it was urgent for me to stop doing that. That was summer. And during winter, I would be sitting and doing sunnah from Dhuhr to Asr, which was like 2 hours time, and then Asr to Maghrib, I would still be doing dhukr. So I was having this immense movement in terms of doing ibadah. But I was in hell. Really hell. And the fasting was destroying me even more. And then I reached to a point where, and I'm just cutting the story short, where I thought I was going to go insane. It's very interesting if you think about that, because if I went insane, what do you think people would have said? That's the problem with too much worshipping. Isn't it? See, when you do all that without a sheikh, that's what happens. That's what people would have said. So I was worried now, I'm going to go insane. And wallahi, I told my cousin, I said, please keep an eye on me, I don't know what's happening inside of me. It's getting really troublesome. So what I decided was, if I'm going to die, I better fast. Okay? So I'm 40 years into my life. And in those 40 years, what I'm going to tell you next is a truth with Allah. Wallahi. In those 40 years, I'd never fallen asleep. I didn't know what sleep meant. I didn't know what sleep meant. This was the hell I was going through. I never woke up rested. I woke up tired. I've never had a rest in any night in all my life. When I was a child, they used to ask me, why are you sleeping with your eyes open? Because I wasn't asleep. I wasn't asleep. I didn't know what sleep meant. Now, because this was since when I have memory, I thought I didn't know what sleep meant. I have not experienced it. I have not experienced life without pain, so I don't know it. So at this point, I thought, okay, let me do some fasting and get out of this world. So what I did was, I did 2 months consecutive fasting. And on the 40th day, as I was continuing, on the 40th day, suddenly that drive to insanity stopped. It stopped. And then I completed the 2 months. And then I had 3 days of diarrhea. And I was worried now. I called my doctor. He said, how many days? I said, 2 days. He said, 1 more day, you'll be okay. Okay, inshallah. Then the 3rd day, the diarrhea stopped. And then I went back to work. After a few days, I didn't know what had happened. After a few days, I realized I'm a postman. I do delivery. The same duty I was doing, I'd cut down the time by 1.5 hours. I wasn't doing anything else. I wasn't running on. The same thing I was doing, the time was now down by 1.5 hours. I thought this is getting weird now. But I also noticed 70%, I would say 70, literally from up here to my toes, every pain I went through had disappeared. Wallahi. And I did not understand it. I just did not understand it. So I called a very beautiful brother, very good friend of mine, is a brother to me, and I said, Muhammad, can you come home? He came home. He said, look, this is what's been happening, and I don't understand this. And I'm sharing this story because it's something I do now and people know that. So he told me, I think you had gene problems. Genes? I don't know anything about genes. So there's a Moroccan sheikh called Sheikh Mustafa. Not the Mustafa that we know of. Yeah, there's another one. I've never met him. So he calls this Sheikh Mustafa and he says, this brother, he wants to talk to you. So I said, And the sheikh said, oh, you had genes. It was sihr. Okay, interesting. Do you want ruqya? I said, no, I think I'm okay. If it's come out, then I'm okay. I don't need ruqya. So I'm going to be okay. Just to tell you, I wasn't going to be okay. There was hell to come. Really, there was hell to come. That was the beginning of another hell. I just didn't know it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be okay, but that pain disappeared. Now the next pain is just really a because I had a dream, and in the dream I was given a name which I had never heard of, Azazel, which is the name of a demon, right? So I didn't know what this name meant to me, so I went to Google, put this name in there, and then took me to Christian understanding of this is one of the names of Satan. Okay, interesting. Then I thought, let me see Muslim sources, what we say. And at that time I was reading one of Ibn Arabi's book. And he has a story about Mansur al-Hallaj having a conversation with Azazel, which is apparently Iblis. Now what he has done, the name actually is Al-Aziz. If you take the L and Azaz, it's actually Al-Aziz. So he's turned the name of Allah, which is what he has, to give himself. So I saw that, but I still didn't see anything in it. Okay, so what? So I thought, just Google a little bit more, see what you can find. And this is really ajib, because what came up next, I went to a website, which is no longer there. And the guy who put the website, the name was Anders Majus, which is just a pseudonym, like a sorcerer. And the information that he put there about this demon and what he can do was word for word what I had experienced for all my life. Word for word what I could never explain. Which was really amazing. And one of the things he said, to survive this demon, you must have infinite stamina. Think about it. I was called a stamina man as a child, and they said, to survive this, you must have infinite stamina. So now I knew where the battle was coming from, and then I also found out where the sihr was all coming from and all these things. You know, because I just decided to talk to the people back home and find out, and now everybody suddenly, they was like, my own relatives wanted to tell me there's something going on here. You know, so it was just right on time. But I wanted to find out, how can they do that? How do you cause so much pain that I cannot even explain it? And I had seen every doctor you can think of, even in this country. Every X-ray you can think of. And they just could not tell me what was wrong with me. So the physical wasn't healing me anymore. So I wanted to find out, how do they do this? And during this period, again, the knowledge started flowing in. And this is how I was led to understand the soul. That unseen. But did I know it immediately? No. Because what happened? I got married, and I had explained to my wife what I went through. But when I got married, the situation became even worse. You know, and the people who know a little bit about my story with my marriage and the person who was behind me and all this. And he wasn't really a good man, you know, but Allah wanted me to know more, which I can talk about in another time. Because he did even more sihr to me, calling himself a sheikh. So there was good and bad that came from him. So my situation became even worse, and I thought I was done. Now the pain up here was even devastating. I could not take any more control. I was like, one example I can give you is, somebody puts a brick on your back and you have to carry it all your life. And it's about like 20 kilograms. You know, that's the effort that I had to put in every day just to continue with my life. And then my son came into the world, alhamdulillah. And when he came to the world, what I realized, we noticed after a while, which took us quite a while to notice, was my son was really having difficulty sleeping. And I thought, this is what happens to children. But I didn't know I was having a different experience. And this time, a very good sheikh came to do ruqyah for me. And he actually said, your ruqyah here is very difficult for me, which meant I wasn't done. But what was also happening, and this is really ajib, I could no longer read the Quran. If you give me the Quran, after 5 verses, my voice will never come out again. And I had lost all the abilities to pronounce Ain and Rain. All the ability, I could not say Ain and Rain, it was all gone. Now I thought, okay, I have to go back to fasting. So Ramadan was just around the corner, finished Ramadan, saw some slight improvement. I thought, okay, I don't have any choice, 40-day fast. So I did a 40-day fast. After that 40-day fast, I saw a massive improvement in my household. My son was getting better. But I knew it's not done because even I can't read the Quran. So 1 day or 2 days later, I started another 40-day fast. And after this, the situation in the house is beautiful. But I was still not reading the Quran. So I knew I had to fast again. I think I had 1 day break, went back to another 40-day fast. And in this third 40-day fast, just the first night, the person who did the sihr to me comes into my dream. And I'm on a journey, and you have these shuyukhs who are praying for me, and they're saying, go now. And this guy appears, can I help you? I said, I don't need your help. And this is somebody I've not seen now like for 3 years. The next night he appears again. Same thing, I said no. The third night, I encounter this place where there's a bridge and there's an old lady standing with a very big axe and very threatening, and it's very night, it's night, and I thought I have to cross the bridge. As I was crossing, this sword turns, big axe, and it's coming to choke me, and after a big confrontation, I just say, I'm going to kill you in the name of Allah. And it becomes a huge bud and disintegrates. And immediately in my bed, I'm coughing and I can see signs of feathers coming out of my throat. And the next day, I was back to reading the Quran. Now, let me tell you what's interesting here again. Wallahi, I was doing a lot of ibadah. Alhamdulillah, this was the grace of Allah. Anything you might say do, I was doing it. Salawats, I finished the whole Dalal Kharak by myself when I sit down. Dhikr, Sadaqah, teach, everything you'd say, a sheikh would tell you, go and do that, I was doing it. The one thing that was the most painful thing in my life was fasting. Yet, I had to go back to that same thing to find healing. This is a lesson that sometimes we have to come out of our comfort zone to get the help of Allah. But it's not in vain, because now the teachings came. That's how I understood now. I understood the tripartite division of the ruh and the qalb and the nafs, and how these three work. And as I was teaching these things, and a very good brother here can testify, they came to my house, I said, look, I want to teach some things. And they sat for 3 hours, they recorded it. And after 3 hours, they said, look, you need to stop. This is too deep for us. And they called me the next day and they said, we want to come back and we need you to break it down. It was too deep for us. And as I was learning these things, and I was telling my wife, she kept saying, write it down, just write it down. I said, don't worry, I'll remember it. You know, and it's one of the gifts that Allah gave me. Alhamdulillah, and Allah preserve. I was given a very powerful memory in terms of some photographing. I could remember things that were really ajib. That was the way I was since I was a child. You know, when I went to drama class, I was given a 30-page script, and I was told, this is your part, go and memorize. And I went to home in the evening, and the next day, the teacher said, have you memorized your part? I said, I memorized the whole script. She said, you're not serious. I said, ask me. You know, so that was part of what I was given. So, subhanAllah. So now I said, no, inshallah, I will remember them. I kept remembering. You know, I could understand all this. It was just flowing. And I started teaching people. But what it did for me now is I could understand a lot of how the unseen is working to harm us. Now reflect about this. Allah says in the Quran about shaitan in Surah Al-A'raf, Surah Al-An'am or Al-A'raf, subhanallah. He says, Al-A'raf, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلَهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. Shaitan sees you and his tribe from where you don't see him. Where is this place? Where is this place? Where do we say is the realm of the soul? It's the Malakut. We are told that it's the realm of the soul, the angels, and the jinns. So what did we say at the beginning? That in your fasting, you might find the veil thinning and understanding that unseen. And that's what fasting does. It's a journey that brings you to that understanding of what? Of who you are, of the soul, and the states of the soul. It's not a journey in vain. And this was my life, but my tribulation wasn't over because I went back to do another 80 days, another 40 days, so it was a continuous thing. And during this process, I also learned a lot of things which we can share another time, like, why do people fast, why do people use these numbers? Some of these numbers we see in the deen, and how Allah actually is the one who's shown us, the power of these numbers and having the effects. So when you're told do this 40 times or do this 7 times, there is meanings to all this. But this is all lessons that I was being taught bi'idhnillah. And it is to benefit people. It is to benefit people. So what I've done is I've shared a little bit of my experience. And if you think about it, is I wasn't this person that wasn't doing what anyone would tell me, do this, you'll get better, do this, you'll get better. I was doing all that. But I had to do something which was the most painful thing for me to learn. Why? Because sometimes we meet people who experience things and they tell us what's the benefit of this thing. So I've mentioned a few people who have experienced things and then they've told us this is what it is. So our acts of worship, they have multiple roles in our lives. You understand? When we experience this, we will want to do more of it. That's what will happen. Whatever we are doing, we will want to do what? Ihsan. Inna Allah kataba al-ihsan ala kulli shay. We will want perfection in all of that. That's what we will want. So the dhikr, you will want to do more dhikr. Right? But don't get trapped in the aim of, I understand if you do all this dhikr, you're going to see the unseen one. Or if you do all this fasting, you're going to see the unseen one. Don't get trapped into that. But realize, whatever you're doing of virtue is so beneficial to this whole universe. And this is how we are going to fight back. This is how we are going to change things. By going deep inside of us. If you look at the Zaytuna Institute, they had for a very long time a quotation by Shah Hamza Yusuf. I don't know if it's still there. And it's something like, you cannot change the world until you change yourself inside of you. I think that's what he said. I can't remember. I'm paraphrasing it. Look it up. That's what he said. You cannot change the world until you change yourself. That is, go inside, deep of you. I have just done that with the grace of Allah, not for me. And I have seen, and he can tell you that I have seen, wallahi, how many people have derived benefit from what I've gone through. The people that I help, even the brother I was helping today, these are muttaqin. These are people of worshipping. And they don't understand the hell they're going through. And they've been going through it for 30 years, 40 years, they just didn't understand it. Until they met me. Wallahi, they told me, I spoke to someone who, for all their life, they were suffering, they didn't know what they were suffering from. When I told them the state they were in, this person said, in all my life, you've told me what I'm going through since I was born. It was through that experience. Allah works through us. That's what He's doing. He's working through us. You are here because Allah wants to work through you. Don't fall short. And I'll tell you this, our elders, really our elders, don't think you have nothing more to offer this world. And I'm saying this out of adab and respect. I see a lot of our elders think it's done, let's just relax, and you have so much still to offer this world. Your prayers, your dhikr, and quite a number of you, our elders, are retired. You have so much time. This dhikr, don't think it's not working. This hizb of the Quran you can do, don't think it's not working. The salawat you can do, it's working. The fasting, I have seen so many people, and I'm saying this, quite a number of people now, they do 40-day fast through me. Just the grace of Allah. Wallahi, they had never done it. Because every time I tell them fast, Rasulullah ﷺ said, Ali went to Rasulullah ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah, Hussein and Hassan are not well. What should I do? What did Rasulullah ﷺ tell him? Fast. Hassan and Hussein are not well. He said, go and fast. You will help them through fasting. There was a very beautiful lady. She was a convert and she used to attend a lot of the gatherings which Habib Jeffrey and all of them used to attend. And I not met her for a while. And then one time I met her after a few years and she said, I want to talk to you. And I immediately knew she had problems. I knew what the problems were. And she told me what she was going through. And I said, you have sihr. They've done sihr to you. And she had an Ifriti jinn from the desert. And because, mashallah, she was really beautiful. So people desired her. She was a convert. And because they couldn't get her, they were doing sihr on her. And wallahi, I'm swearing to you, I've seen this twice in my life. A brother that I helped to become a Muslim, within a short time, people are doing sihr to him. Because he had gifts. I helped him take shahada. He came to me, he learned the deen, and he said, I'm going to take shahada from you. I said, no, let's go to the Muslim masjid. And then soon after that, there was sihr. So I have seen this, that what we can do to each other. And this sister, her family abandoned her when she became a Muslim. They didn't want anything to do with her. And the brothers, the first one who married her left her. The second one, so she was not just in dire needs, really. So when she met me, she said, and this was in a talk that there was Habib Jeffrey, there was Habib Omar. I was in that talk, and she was there. She said, I said, good, let's talk. So I went and did some ruqyah for her. This is what was happening, and it helped her so much. And then I realized she can't even do a lot in the state she's in. So what I did, I didn't tell her this. I went home and I made a niyyah. I fasted for 40 days without telling her. And I said, Allah help this sister. And a few weeks after that, maybe two, she called me and she said, Akhi, I want to call you. I wanted to call you because I wanted to tell you I'm really getting better. Said, I'm really getting better. I can see these things getting out of me. And then one night I was sleeping, before bed, I watched a program on TV and they were showing Palestinian kids. And these Palestinian kids were 6, 7 years old and they hated their lives. They wished for death. And the girls, they had bullets lodged in their heads. And because there is no medical facilities, they were turning blind. And I was just in tears. Absolute tears. And I just finished doing a 240-day fast. And my wife said, "What? You're crying now and I know what you're going to do next." I said, "Yeah, just give me permission." She said, "Okay, go ahead." So I did another 40-day fast. I said, "Ya Allah, just help these kids." Iraqi people, 40-day fast, Ya Allah, help them. We can do this. We can become greater people. And it was not in vain because Allah kept changing my state. Wallahi. Now the final bit, which I'm going to share with you. I'll have to do that offline. I won't do this online because again it concerns the Muslim Ummah. Okay? And this is to do with tribulations. So I apologize for that.